Yo, what it do, 2K fans? This your boy JuKING the Boss, and I'm back at it again. And this image is one that I've been looking at for probably the past 48 hours, maybe 40 of the past 48 hours, mainly because at the end of the day, I really wanted to understand how the attribute system is going to work, how the created player system is going to work within MyCAREER. Now, we can all speculate, and I had to go back and look at some older MyCAREER attribute systems to understand where my speculation is going to go, to really figure out what they were thinking when they put this system in play and how we can expect it to work out. And based on the information, I think I might have figured out exactly how this attribute system is going to work. Now, before we dive into that, first I want to talk to y'all about a tweet that Zach Timmerman put out, which was, every archetype has been rebuilt from badges to attribute towers, skill gap, top priority, hashtag NBA 2K19. And it goes over what a lot of people have been saying, that you can't really choose your archetype that you want to use for 2K19 now until you see the archetypes and what's available, what badges they'll have, what's their caps and things like that. Because if you choose that archetype now and then you go in thinking that archetype is going to play the same way it played in 2K18, based on this little message right here, you're gonna be woefully mistaken. So now let's dive back into it. Now, when you look at this image right here, you notice that there's a lot of dead space. Now, I didn't take into consideration like the floor being dead space, but just what you see on this screen right here. Now, I want to go back a little bit for the other images. So let's start off with 2K14, the first next gen 2K. And I kid you not, first of all, I do miss this system a little bit, outside of the having to continuously add plus 10 until you get to what your attribute cap was. But first and foremost, I realized something when going back and looking at these, is that there was never really a point in time where you created a player and you knew what those numbers capped out at until you got through I think the 2K14 was the only one where after you got through that first cutscene, you was able to at least see where your attributes could cap out at and everything like that, but you still had to go through that first cutscene. 2K18 was the worst because you had to go through possibly like an hour and 30 minutes worth of cutscenes or just to see what your caps was, and if your caps didn't match what you wanted, then it's like, oh my goodness, we're in some trouble. But when you look at 2K15, it wasn't until after you got past your first couple of games and got drafted that you was able to actually see this as well. So in 2K15 was where it all kind of really started to change. Now, I missed this kind of setup as well, because at the end of the day, it meant that you can apply your abilities anywhere and everywhere. Same thing with 2K14. 2K14 meant that you had a cap that was only based on what position you were playing, and your height and weight could shift your cap a little bit, but not a lot. But in 2K15 now, who missed the fact that you was able to really break down where you was applying attributes at in so much detail. I mean, I really do miss that aspect, because real talk, sometimes you just want to, you got enough VC to put up one or two things, but because they group so many things together now, you kind of got to group that VC together now, and that allows them to add a little more to the cost of the VC and this, that, and the other. So I kind of really do miss diving deep. Like I said, I don't miss the plus 10 because it just meant that it took forever to get all these up. Now, and like I said, in 2K15, I also missed this kind of setup, which is you start off as a raw prospect with none of these abilities boosted up. You're basically given a base overall. You started off with overall 63 based on the position that you chose and the height and weight that you chose. So that was something that I looked at and thought that, okay, that's pretty cool. Then when you go to 2K16, it didn't change but so much. Okay, so in 2K16 you still had a starting base and everything, but your overall actually started off lower. So in 2K16 your overall started off at 55. And the thing about it was, the only big issue I had with 2K16 was this was the first start of really having to go through so much before you can apply your attributes and everything like that. But it was still a decent setup overall. 2K17 was, to me, that's when it became the most problematic. Mainly because in both of these, at least it wasn't long before you can see exactly what your attributes would cap off at. And at that point, you still didn't have a cap for anything. You just had a max level that you can get. So if you boosted up all this in 2K16, if you boosted up all your athletic, then you would automatically max out almost everything in athletic based on position, height, and weight. All right. Now, when you go to 2K17, all these things had a cap just because they wanted to make it a more balanced game. And the only thing it really did was it made people lean more toward particular builds as opposed to playing the way they want to have fun. You realize that you got to be a sharpshooter in order to be competitive. You realize you got to be a lockdown defender in order to be able to stop competitive shooting sharpshooters, getting around screens, this, that, and the other. You had big men with brick wall that was knocking you on your ass and 10 feet away. You know, it was just so much that you had to go through when it came down to it. And then we get to 2K18 and they bring in the dual archetypes and everybody's like, okay, well, at least we got a dual archetype. But what's the problem? The problem was that nobody was able to see what these bars represented. So you wasn't able to see what these represented. You knew that if you had this build right here, that mean that your ball handling at point guard was going to be over 90. You knew that, you know. You knew that if you had right here, you was going to be at about 95 or well, no, about 90, 91, 92, because you always know that the last few bars only add +1 or +2 in total. So, you know, there were certain things where you was able to look at and say, okay, well, I know what these are going to be, but down at the lower ends, you're like, okay, it could add +6 here, +4 there, +3 there. And you also didn't know what was under each one of these categories. Now we get to 2K19, and this one is there's a whole lot of things that you got to understand. So as you saw in all of these pictures, there really is no empty space. Okay, there's no empty space anywhere. But that brings me to the biggest point to make in the 2K19 video. Now, right here, you look at how these attributes are set up, and I believe that this is exactly how it's going to break down. Once you stand right here, next thing you know, you'll be able to choose your height, and then you'll be able to choose your weight, wingspan, and primary and secondary archetypes. That's the one way I'm thinking that you'll be able to do it. So if you're choosing your primary, secondary archetypes, then it's going to tell you these bars are going to move to where they can max out at. All right, it's going to move to where they can max out at. Now, here's why I said that it's important to understand this part of it, because we could finally get a 2K where when we're creating our players, we can see exactly what our max caps and our starting caps are going to be. And because there's a lot of empty space right here. Now, if you look on this side, you see how tight this is right here. There's really no empty space right here. If there's only empty space right here, because the simple fact is they're all lined up, aligned to the right. They're not aligned to the left. Okay. But if these are all aligned up to one another, then why not use all this space right here? I believe that it's because you'll be able to see your numbers right here. You'll be able to see what I'm guessing you're going to be able to see two numbers. You're going to be able to see your starting and you're going to be able to see your max. And at that point in time, that right there will give 2K a slight win from the community standpoint, because now people could spend time looking at what kind of build that they want to build, but at the same time, they'll feel more comfortable knowing going into the build that they choose. Now, regardless of how things change throughout the course of the life cycle of 2K19, you'll at least know what you're starting at and where you'll be able to max at. And that, like I said, it's too much empty space right here. I'm not counting this right here. I'm just counting this empty space right here and everything. Now, you look at it on the other side and you say, okay, well, maybe, if it's basically perpendicular to the empty space you got over here. But I also believe that height isn't the only thing that you're going to see right here. You're going to see height, you're going to see weight, you're going to see wingspan. And wingspan is a long word. So when it really boils down to it, I believe wingspan is going to be one of those words that's going to cover so wide. And so the thing about it is there's so many details that have been left out. But if you actually go back and look at the trailer, they skipped right past this in time before you saw anything else pop up. So like this part was controlled by the user on the sticks and everything, and then they skip right to the next cutscene that you that they wanted you to see to help you showcase what the story's looking like. So when you really think about it, like we could finally get that 2K, and it's sad that we're so excited about that, because it's something that they should have done a long time ago. I mean, you, like I said, you really look at it, it's something that dates far back, long before for real, especially when you look at 2K14 through 16. Mainly the reason why I say those two is because 2K14 allowed you to choose what kind of point guard or shooting guard. So you could be an athletic point, you could be a shooting point, you could be a defensive point, and so you was able to choose those kind of builds and then build it any which way you want. The choice that you made basically chose what you would start off with higher than everything else. So like if you were a shooting point, you would have better shooting attributes to start off with. If you were athletic point, you would have better athletic skills, so dunking, speed. You would have better layups and things like that to start off with at your position. So when you really boil down to it and you go through each and every one of them, I would love to return to more of an aspect, not an aesthetic, but an aspect like this, where our builds are just kind of like, okay, all blanked out, and we can just add to it and choose which way we go. Some people like it, some people won't, and I would hope that by choosing where you wanted to put your points at, it would then tell you up here, you know what I'm saying? So if I chose to add 5 here, add 5 here, before I buy those and everything like that, it'll tell me what like an arrow right here saying, okay, raw prospect becomes, you know, shot creating sharpshooter and everything like that, or raw prospect becomes a jump shooter, you know. So when it comes down to it, it's so many things that they could do and everything like this. So like you look right here, like this was a raw prospect at one point, but once these attributes were applied, it became a shoot first point. Okay, so like because he didn't add any playmaking yet, it's a shoot first point. So you know, when you look at things like that, and then you see where we went with 2K17, where you was able to see the level caps, not the attribute caps, but the level caps of what these attributes can be. It lets you know that, okay, look, if you create a playmaker, these are where you can max out on all these little stats. But when it came down to it, what threw you off is that you didn't know what those numbers represented in 2K17, and in 2K18 it was much of the same, but we didn't complain about it for real until 2K18. And so that's why from 2K17 to 2K18 it stayed the same. But 2K19, there's too much empty space and there's not a lot of information that's still on the board. So like I said, I believe height, weight, wingspan, and things like that are going to be listed right over here. Maybe if they allow you to choose your archetypes, then it'll say primary, secondary, and then maybe show you they'll either show you your badges, or that's what could be what the brown floor is for. Like, you know, they always find a way to utilize empty space. So maybe after choosing your height, weight, wingspan, and what's that, arm length, no, hand length, maybe you go back to choosing hand size. I know at one point you used to be able to, but maybe after choosing your height, weight, wingspan, and maybe your college or your number, then you'll be able to choose your primary, secondary archetypes. Or if they say height, weight, wingspan, number, and college, then you can choose to boost these stats up whichever way you want, and then it'll tell you what your archetype will be, you know, down here at the bottom. And that's my theory. But like I said, it's still a whole lot of news left to come out. I'm hoping that you all enjoyed this one. And let me know in the comments below, what are your thoughts? Do you think that we're going to see that kind of system come into play? Are you hoping for a system that's more like that? I mean, how do you see this image and believe that they're going to do the archetype system moving forward? You know, this your boy JuKING the Boss. I'm going to catch you guys on the next one. Peace.